So, what's really keeping the world's leaders up at night? Well, every year, the World Economic Forum tries to answer that exact question. And let me tell you, their latest report is a huge wake up call. We're going to dive in and break down the biggest risks facing all of us. Now, everything we're about to talk about comes from their Global Risks Perception Survey. And this is not just some random poll. We're talking about insights from over 1,000 experts, people from business, government, academia, basically the folks on the very front lines of these global challenges, mapping out the dangers ahead. And what they're saying is, well, it's pretty sobering. After years of a global pandemic, crazy inflation, and brutal wars, the report finds that the global outlook is more negative than it's been at any point in the last 10 years. So the big question we're tackling here is, why is everyone so pessimistic? And the numbers really tell the story here. For the next 2 years, about half of these experts are bracing for a turbulent or even stormy future. But look what happens when you look out 10 years. That number jumps up to over 2/3. It seems the further out they look, the more worried they get. This deep sense of anxiety really gets us to the core theme of the entire report. We're living in a world that's incredibly fragile right now. And the central idea is this. We're all caught in this incredibly dangerous balancing act. We are so busy putting out today's fires, the geopolitical crises, the economic shocks, that we're completely failing to prepare for these slower burning, but maybe even more catastrophic dangers that are looming just over the horizon. Okay, so let's start with those immediate crises. What are the fires that are sucking up all the oxygen in the room right now? Topping the list for the next 2 years is a term you've probably heard, but it's crucial to understand: geoeconomic confrontation. And this goes way beyond just simple trade wars. It's about countries strategically using their entire economic power, their finances, their technology, their supply chains, as a weapon against rivals. And you can see here what that arsenal actually looks like. We're talking about everything from old-school tariffs to weaponizing critical supply chains, to slapping sanctions on key technologies like AI and microchips, and even seizing financial assets. The global economy has literally become a battleground. Now, right behind that is the number 2 short-term risk, and it's something we all deal with every single day. Our information world has been completely turned on its head. The old days of a few trusted central news sources are gone. Now we live in this fragmented, chaotic digital world, and that makes all of us way more vulnerable. And get a load of this statistic. Just think about it. A little over a decade ago, only 4% of Americans got most of their news from social media. What is it today? It's exploded to 34%. That's not just a small shift, folks. That is a seismic change in how we consume information as a society. And the report is crystal clear about the damage this does. All this false information, it erodes our ability to even have a reasonable debate. It undermines how we respond to real crises, and it just pushes people toward more extreme views. And that, right there, feeds directly into the number 3 risk: societal polarization. So those are the intense, immediate problems. But remember that balancing act we talked about? While we're all focused on geoeconomics and disinformation, the report asks a pretty chilling question. What are these slow-burning threats that we're all failing to address? And this brings us to the second, and arguably more frightening, half of the report's warning. Let's see what happens when the experts shift their gaze from the next 2 years to the next 10. All right, so here's a snapshot of what they're worried about right now. The top 5 are pretty much all about geopolitical conflict, tech disruption, and social divisions. I want you to notice that only one environmental risk, extreme weather, even cracks the top 5, okay? Now just hold that thought. Because this is the jaw-dropping shift. When we look a decade out, the whole picture changes. The board turns almost completely green. 3 of the top 5 biggest risks are environmental catastrophes. And that third one, critical change to Earth systems, that means we're talking about irreversible tipping points, like the collapse of ocean currents or the Amazon rainforest dying back. The geopolitical squabbles of today are almost totally replaced by a fight for our planet's survival. And this is the core warning of the entire report. Our intense focus on the emergencies of today is basically blinding us to the existential threats of tomorrow. You could say we're busy rearranging the deck chairs on a rapidly warming planet. And this right here perfectly illustrates that disconnect. Just look at the risk from AI. In the short term, the experts rank it way, way down at number 30. But in the long term, it skyrockets all the way to number 5. That shows a massive anxiety about the unchecked long-term consequences of a technology that we are developing at breakneck speed right now. So
with this really stark picture of crises competing for our attention. Where do we possibly go from here? Well, the report's conclusion isn't actually about doom and gloom. It's about making a choice.
And this is so important to understand. This report is not some kind of fortune telling. It's not saying this dark future is guaranteed. Think of it more like a warning flare, designed to show us where our focus is and where it really needs to be. It's all about the choices that are still ours to make. And I think this quote from the report just sums it all up perfectly. The path ahead isn't set in stone. The future can be shaped, for better or for worse, by the things we decide to prioritize right now. It really puts the responsibility squarely back on our shoulders. Which really leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? The central dilemma of our time. It's the tightrope that we all have to walk. How do we possibly manage the very real, very urgent crises of today without completely mortgaging our collective future? That's the challenge this report leaves for all of us to think about.